When I first moved into the lakeside property, I thought I had found paradise. The air was crisp, the reflection of the mountains shimmered across the still water, and the evenings were painted in gold. That lake wasn't just scenery to me, it was peace, therapy, and memory. My late father and I had spent our last summer together on those same banks, teaching me to fish and appreciate the quiet moments of life. So when I bought that property after years of saving, it wasn't just land, it was home. The problem started the day I met the HOA president, Karen Pemberton. Perfect hair, sharp tone, and a clipboard that seemed to hold more power than any legal document I'd ever seen. She greeted me with a fake smile and a warning. "Fishing isn't permitted in this community lake, Mr. Larson," she said. "We like to keep it pristine for the residents." I looked at her, then back at the lake I owned. "Ma'am, that's my shoreline and by extension, part of that lake is private. I've got the deed to prove it." Her smile faltered, but only for a second. "We'll see about that." From that day on, she made it her mission to make my life miserable. Letters piled up on my porch, complaints about unauthorized boat storage, unapproved dock lights, and even disturbing the neighborhood ecosystem because I dared to cast a fishing line at dawn. I ignored her, determined to keep my peace, but I had no idea just how far she and her board would go. One morning, I walked down to the lake and noticed something strange. The water looked cloudy, almost greenish. Dead fish floated near the shore, their silver bodies catching the morning light. My heart sank. I scooped up a sample and rushed it to a local environmental lab. The results made my blood run cold. High levels of pesticide and chemical runoff, the kind used for weed control but lethal to aquatic life. Someone had poisoned my lake. I knew exactly who had done it. The HOA had scheduled a community lake maintenance event just 2 days before, claiming they needed to control algae growth. I confronted Karen at their next meeting, slamming the lab results on the table. "You killed everything in that lake," I said, voice shaking with anger. "That water is contaminated now, completely toxic." Karen smirked. "We did what we had to. It's not your private pond, Mr. Larson. It's for everyone, and if that means no fishing, then so be it." The entire board nodded in approval. I couldn't believe it. Their arrogance was staggering. But what they didn't realize, or what none of them know, was that the lake wasn't just decoration for their overpriced homes. It fed directly into their neighborhood's water reservoir. Every drop of water that came out of their taps, every shower, every coffee they brewed came from the same lake they had just poisoned. I said nothing, not that day, not for weeks. I let them keep their smugness while I quietly gathered proof. I hired a hydrologist to trace the water flow, and he confirmed data. The HOA's water system pulled directly from the lake through an underground filtration system they maintained. I kept their reports, photographs, and samples ready. Then, 2 weeks later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. A neighbor, Mrs. Granta, a kind widow who always waved when I passed it, said her water smelled strange. Then another called the county complaining of nausea after drinking from the tap. Within days, the entire subdivision was under investigation for water contamination. The HOA called an emergency meeting. I attended quietly, sitting at the back as panic spread across the room. Residents demanded answers. Karen was sweating, trying to keep her composure. "There's been a temporary issue with the filtration system," she stammered. "We're handling it." That's when I stood up. "No, you're not handling anything," I said, walking to the front. "You caused it." Every head turned. I placed the hydrologist's report and the lab results on the table. "Your little chemical stunt to stop me from fishing? It didn't just kill the fish, it poisoned your own drinking water. The lake you thought you could control sustains the entire community. You destroyed it out of spite." The room fell silent. The sheriff, who'd been standing near the door, stepped forward to collect the papers. Karen's face went pale as he asked her to accompany him outside. The rest of the board tried to defend themselves, but it was useless. The evidence was undeniable. A week later, the HOA was suspended pending investigation. Karen and 2 board members faced charges for environmental damage and contamination. Clean-up crews worked for months, trying to restore what they had ruined. Meanwhile, I stayed on my land, watching the slow healing of the lake. The water eventually began to clear again. A few fish returned, released by the state wildlife department. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, I cast my fishing line again. A familiar calm washed over me, the same peace I used to feel sitting beside my father. The reflection of the sky rippled gently across the surface. The sound of frags returned. For the first time in months, the lake felt alive again. A few of the neighbors who'd once followed Karen's lead came by to apologize. They admitted they'd been wrong to let the hoe bully me, that they trusted her too easily. I accepted their apologies. I wasn't one to hold grudges, but I hoped they'd all learn something important. Because power, when used out of pride, destroys more than property. It poisons community, trust, and peace. And nature, like truth, always has a way of revealing itself. Now, whenever I stand on that dock, I smile at the reflection staring back at me. The lake survived, so did I. And as for the HOA, let's just say they'll think twice before crossing someone who understands that protecting what you love isn't defiance, a broken bar, it's justice. Moral: never underestimate the quiet ones who care deeply. Some battles are fought not with noise, but with patience, and sometimes nature itself fights back.